Hey guys, welcome to another video. So today we're going to be doing a winter wrap-up video. At the beginning of this year, I was pretty good doing monthly wrap-ups, but then during the winter period, I thought that I would read a lot more than I did, but because I read so little, I decided to make this video and just combine all the books that I read during the winter months. I'm so sorry, but in total, I read 5 books within 3 months. That is, yeah, a little shocking, huh? Enough said, we'll get straight into this wrap-up. So, the first book I finished during the winter month was Little Fires Everywhere by Celeste Ng. I technically started this book during the Asian readathon that was happening during May, but I didn't get to finish it during that readathon month. However, I continued on with it and I finished it during the month of June. Safe to say, I love Celeste Ng. I really enjoyed her previous book, Everything I Never Told You, and then now this book, I think I'm a fan. I am a fan of Celeste Ng, and in the future, if she writes any more books, I will definitely be checking her books out. Honestly speaking, the premise of this story wasn't that appealing to me, but because it was by Celeste Ng, I knew she was going to weave the story into something a lot more interesting. Like I said in my, I think, Asian readathon kind of wrap-up video, definitely think that I said that I enjoyed the mystery aspect. I definitely think that Celeste Ng does a really good job in intertwining some serious and heavier topics along with an interesting and compelling sort of mystery. Her books aren't like a mystery crime thriller kind of thing. It's definitely literary fiction, but she still writes in a way where the story has some sort of underlying mystery that you're trying to solve throughout the book, and I really like that. That kept me engaged the whole time and just kept me interested in trying to figure out what the heck is going on. So I ended up really enjoying this book. Now I will say that I didn't enjoy it as much as Everything I Never Told You, but regardless, I really did enjoy Little Fires Everywhere overall. I gave this book a 4 out of 5 stars on Goodreads. This book kind of follows like multiple point of views. There's a lot of different characters that you are following throughout this novel. We have this sort of pristine, rich, suburban family in this quiet, nice suburban area. And then one day we have this lady and her daughter coming in to this neighborhood and causing a lot of different sort of drama, and safe to say it was a very interesting read. It seems like this was the only book that I finished in the month of June, which I am sorry. I should have been more active in my reading. I highly enjoyed it. And it's not very often that I do read literary fiction, but I feel like Celeste Ng never disappoints. The next book that I have here for you is The Silence of Bones, and this is by June He. So this one I picked up for the readathon that happened during the month of June, and I highly enjoyed this. This was the book that they chose for the readathon. Safe to say, I highly enjoyed this book as well. It seems like I was on a bit of a mystery kick during the month of June, but I picked this book up. It's set in the Joseon dynasty in Korea, and it's basically a murder mystery. Overall, I found this very intriguing. I found it very refreshing, should I say. It is a YA fiction, but the setting of the story is in such a unique time period. It's such a different culture. I mean, me being Korean, I should know these things, but I don't know, I was born in Australia, so I'm a little bit kind of ignorant when it comes to like very traditional Korean culture. I am Korean, shame on me, but I was very happy to read a book that is sort of set in a traditional Korea. It kind of reminded me of like Korean drama. So the basic premise of this story is that you're following this girl who is helping a detective solve this sort of murder case. People are sort of getting murdered in this kingdom. However, one day they find a body of sort of an upper class woman who's also being be murdered, and so this investigation takes off and you're just following this girl who's helping this detective solve this case, but then like this detective becomes sort of like a prime suspect for the murder, and you're just trying to solve this mystery with the main character and what truly is going on. What seems like a very simple kind of murder mystery case, it kind of slowly unravels into this bigger conspiracy that's going on in this kingdom, and it's just really intriguing. It was just a very compelling murder mystery novel, even though I don't really read from this genre very often, but you know, every now and then when I dip my toes into the crime genre, I end up really enjoying myself. So this is one that I really enjoyed, mainly for the setting, and I really like the main character, even though she does have some flaws. The mystery aspect, I feel like some of it was predictable though. So if you kind of read from the crime genre a lot, I don't know if this book would surprise you in any way, but for me, because I don't really read from that genre that often, I was really engaged the whole time, and I overall just had a fun time trying to guess the whole way through along with the character. And yeah, I highly enjoyed this book and I would highly recommend. I gave this book 4 out of 5 stars on Goodreads again, and this one I finished in the month of July. So the next book that I finished for the Create-a-thon was Kim Jiyoung, born 1982, by Cho Nam Joo, and this book I was relatively excited for it, and then I read it and I guess, I don't know, I still don't know how I overall feel about this book, but I ended up giving this book 3 out of 5 stars on Goodreads. I definitely feel like what the author was writing about was very relatable. As a female who grew up in a Korean household, there's definitely elements of like sexism and gender inequalities going on, and so that is something that I can relate to, even though in our modern day society we think that, you know, we have more of an equality these days, but still there is that sort of traditional mindset with the older generation, and so I kind of feel like we still have quite a whiles away before this sort of mentality kind of changes for the generations to come. So this book is set into, I think, 3 parts or 4 parts. This story is split into 6 parts. The first part is during the present day, and then it goes back to 1982, and you're just following this main character, Kim Jiyoung, during the different periods of her life. Yeah, like I said, I very much related to a lot of the things and a lot of the sort of heavier commentary on society I definitely agreed with and related to a lot, but at the end of the day I kind of felt sort of disconnected with all the characters. Even though I can relate to the things that were going on and how Kim Jeong was sort of treated, I still didn't feel any connection between Kim Jeong and me. So I kind of read it like, how should I say, factually? No, that's not correct. I don't know if you get what I mean. I felt very disconnected to the character, and I guess at the end of the day, that was sort of the point. I think that this narrative style was definitely trying to put you in a mindset where it is a faceless character. It is a typical woman that is going through life. I guess the whole point of this book was for people to read it and kind of put themselves in Kim Jeong's shoes and kind of see the story for how society is and how women are treated, and the whole gender inequality and sexism that is running rampant in Korea. I guess in a way it was sort of the point of making the story seem very, I don't know, disconnected in a way where you could relate to the character and you can see yourself in the character's shoes, but you weren't really emotionally invested in the characters in themselves, because the writing style was written in such a way where you couldn't, I feel like you just couldn't really emotionally connect with these characters. But it's strange because you can understand what the character is going through, and so I found it a fascinating read, but at the end of the day I wasn't attached to the story. So I definitely think that this is an important read. Is it kind of necessary? I'm not too sure. I'm not too sure. But I feel like the reason why this book is such a hit in Korea is that Cho Nam Joo definitely challenged the traditional Korean mindset. So it was very different and kind of brave for her to write about this sort of injustice. And so I applaud her for that, and that's probably why she was such a hit in Korea, because people don't tend to talk about, you know, gender inequality and sexism. They kind of think that it's a norm, and so it's definitely important that she challenges those ideas. And so yeah, I definitely thought that it was an important read in that sense. But at the end of the day, I couldn't really fully love this book because I wasn't emotionally connected in any way. Yeah, important read. I am glad that I read it, but it was pretty average, I must say. And I don't know if it's because it's translated fiction and just words and sentences just got lost in translation and it just didn't flow as nicely, because there's definitely sentences in the book where it is beautifully written. However, it was sort of very inconsistent. Some sentences just felt very sterile and felt very emotionless. It could be translation issues. At the end of the day, yeah, it's an average read for me, and I kind of feel bad about that because it is like an international bestseller and whatnot. But yeah, the next book that I picked up was The Imaginaries, Little Scraps of Larger Stories by Emily Winfield Martin. And to be honest, I got this because the cover was beautiful and the illustrations throughout it like are right up my alley. It's a little bit in the realms of creepy but whimsical and just magical in its own way, but it's definitely an illustrative style that I enjoy. Like, I don't know, it just vibes well with me. This is just a book full of her paintings. As you saw, she basically kind of captions like a quote that matches up with the painting, and it's just so beautiful. It's designed to inspire you, and I just found it like a lovely little, not read per se, but it was just lovely to kind of flick through and look at all the images. I just felt like this book was just very pleasing to the eye, and it didn't need to do anything more than that. It was basically just cute quotes, cute images, and I just enjoyed my time. I actually gave this book 5 out of 5 stars. After reading this, I'm definitely curious to see what her writing style is like. I hope that it's sort of whimsical and dreamlike, sort of captures the essence of what this book did. This is basically a picture book, by the way, I'm not gonna lie. So moving on to the final book that I finished in the month of July was Nevernight by Kristoff. And I was very skeptical going into this. I actually really wanted to read this for the longest time, but I was a little bit skeptical, even though initially when this book was really hyped up and all that, everyone was loving it. Recently, when I've been watching other booktubers, it's been getting pretty negative feedback, and I was a little concerned going into it. And I can understand those opinions, but at the end of it all, I was highly entertained by this book. I definitely thought that it built upon a very interesting world, and it had an interesting magic system as well, which I feel like wasn't properly explained in the first book, but I definitely want to know more about the magic system of the world in future books. But I hear the second book is really good, so I'm very much looking forward to that. In terms of the entertainment factor, I did pretty much enjoy the story. I definitely thought that at least the first book was going to explore more of the world building and all that. However, it kind of relatively stayed in the same location. Basically, the story is about this girl who's on a revenge path because her family was sort of wronged and killed, and she kind of wants to revenge the death of her family and whatnot. And since then, she kind of trains her way into this assassin school, and she kind of wants to further those skills in order to take revenge on the people that wronged her family. And it's kind of that typical revenge story that fantasy books like to do, But you know what? I was engaged. I definitely like the world. I kind of want the magic to be explained a little bit more. This book is pretty brutal. There's a lot of action, blood and gore, and so if you're a little bit, you know, queasy when it comes to violence, you might want to put this book away. However, I don't care about violence, so I highly enjoyed this book. It was very entertaining. The characters though, I feel like the characters can be improved upon. The main character, so angsty, and then some of the other characters surrounding her also very angsty, and so I feel like we can do a lot more better with the characters. However, I'm intrigued in terms of the plot line, and also I was impressed that the author was a little ballsy when it came to just like killing off characters. Like there was no safe character, so I enjoyed that aspect. I definitely did, and yeah, I liked it. Overall, I gave this book a 4 out of 5 stars. I can definitely see why certain people will kind of rank this book quite low, but for me, I enjoyed it, and I'm not ashamed to admit that I like Nevernight. And I know that I said that I read 5 books during the winter months, but actually I have one more book that I read in the month of August, and that would be Misery by Stephen King. Oh my gosh. I've been wanting to read this book for so long, and yeah, it was the only book that I managed to finish in the month of August. That was my birthday month. I thought I'd do a lot more reading in the month of August. However, I guess it was my birthday month, and I kind of spent it more on spending time with my family and friends, and so yeah, I guess in a sense I spent it how I wanted to spend it. But at the end of the day, I did finish Misery, which I've been wanting to read for the longest time, and I finally did it. And I don't know, whenever I ask someone what their favorite Stephen King book is, always Misery is on their list. Like I feel like Misery, Carrie, and Pet Sematary are the 3, oh, and The Shining. So they're like the top 4 that always kind of gets recommended. I do have The Green Mile, which I heard was really good, and also The Stand. However, The Stand is like, is that like over 1,000 pages? I'm pretty sure that's over 1,000 pages, and I just can't get myself to read that book. Even though I kind of started it, I got like 200 pages in a while ago, and yeah, I never continued. I don't know why. Also, I feel like The Stand is very kind of relatable, where it starts off with sort of a virus and sort of a pandemic. So in a sense, maybe I should read it. Anyway, I digress. Moving on to the book that I finished in August, which was Misery by Stephen King, of course. I highly enjoyed this book. It was such an entertaining read. I definitely felt so bad for Paul. I will say this book kind of, okay, so it follows like the narrative of Paul and what's going on with his story. He's basically a very famous writer, and he ends up waking up at someone else's house. He's had a car crash, and he's pretty much stuck in this house with this lady who claims that she's his #1 fan. Safe to say, horrific things ensue after that. The whole entire way I felt very sorry for Paul. Like, he goes above and beyond to survive this woman. Annie is just the worst and best villain that I've read in recent years. Seriously, she is terrifying, so unpredictable, and you just think that one moment she's okay, and then the next moment she's like, I ain't gonna spoil that, but she does some terrifyingly awful and brutal things that you don't expect, and you just feel so bad for the main character. And I was just, it was just a terrifying read, and that ending, won't comment. But I gave this book a 4 out of 5 stars on Goodreads, only because it would have been 5. But I gave it 4 because there's areas of the story that I didn't really care for, which were the parts where he's writing his novel. I didn't really care for what was going on in the story, like his book that he's writing. So whenever the chapters came to that aspect of the story. I was really just trudging through those parts of the book. It definitely slowed me down, and I think if the whole story was kind of focused on Paul and Annie, then I would have read this book a lot more quicker. It definitely kind of slowed down my reading experience, I think. Anyway, the basic premise is this number one fan is forcing him to write another book while he's trapped in a home and he can't really move because his bones are sort of shattered from the pelvis down because he's had his car crash. And so yeah, he can't really move or escape from a house, and so he's kind of trapped there, forced to write a book that he doesn't want to write. And so terrifying, and Annie, that awful human being, it's just so intense, and I loved every bit of it. Aside from the part where he's writing the misery book, yeah, I definitely was highly entertained by this book, and I'm definitely excited to read more things by Stephen King. Definitely understand why he's so beloved. Also, horror is not sort of a genre that I really read from, and so yeah, it's definitely got me intrigued. It's got me interested into picking up more books by him. I might end up picking up Carrie for the next book that I read. I own that book, of course, if you see my Stephen King book haul, so I definitely want to pick that one up next, especially because it's one of his shorter books, and you know, if you know Stephen King, he writes some very hefty terms, and so yeah, I do want to start off with his more smaller works before diving into his more longer stories. So yeah, that is it guys. Those are the books that I finished in the winter months, and when I say winter, Australian winter, I feel like for the most part I definitely had a good reading experience during this season. However, yeah, I read a lot less than I thought I would. I had quite a long winter TBR list, which I didn't really follow. Oh, did I follow? I guess I somewhat kind of followed the TBR video. I definitely want to continue on with some of the books that were on my TBR in the following months ahead. That is it for today guys. These are all the books that I finished in the winter months. This is not a very impressive stack. I'm still very happy that I was able to read throughout the winter months. Anyway, that is it guys. I hope you guys enjoyed. Have you guys read any of these books? What did you guys end up reading during the winter slash summer months? I'm just glad that I didn't have anything below a 3-star rating. And so yeah, that's it for today guys. I hope you guys are staying safe and healthy, and I will see you in my next video. Bye!